In 2010, a FEMA executive warned me that this was coming, and I thought he was a little bit nuts. I want to give credit to Sean Ryan for having people like this on the show. Watch this quick clip, and then I'm going to tell you explicitly what this FEMA executive told me back in 2010.
They're trying to put us into famine because pandemic, famine, and war, they go together, like the triangle of death.
What do you advise people do to get ready for it?
It's not going to be easy, and especially if you live in a major city. People go to cannibalism within 2 weeks. They're going to be coming into your house. When the crickets come out, it's time to do X.
So this type of thing seems hard to believe, but there's places around the world where we're seeing these type of things happen right now. But I'm going to stick specifically with what I was told by FEMA would happen in the United States if our food stamp system melted down. Now, you may know it under other names. You may know it under SNAP or WICK or EBT. You may know it under the EBT system. But we keep hearing this number that 47, 42 million Americans are on some type of assistance right now. And that's really not the case. That's not honest. If you sit down and you take all of the combined services that Americans are on right now, now, you can take WIC, you can take EBT, you can take SNAP, but also let's talk about Medicare, Medicaid, let's talk about Social Security, let's talk about other things that many, many Americans are dependent on. It's closer to 50% of Americans that receive some type of a discount benefit payment, something like that, that they require to exist. So, this FEMA executive, I'm only going to tell you his first name is Gary. I'm not going to tell you his entire name. Gary is now retired. Let me tell you what his job was and why this is so important, what he shared with me. So when he was in the military, he did several tours overseas. His job was feasibility studies. The military would come to him and say, hey, Gary, we have this city, what is the likelihood of X, Y, or Z happening? Like, give us the scenarios. And he would do feasibility studies on different scenarios in those cities. And so when he retired from the military, he went to work for FEMA. And he essentially had the same job, which was threat and vulnerability assessments is what it was. I think that's what his official job was, doing threat and vulnerability assessments. And he finally became very frustrated with the job, and he got a second retirement working for FEMA. I think this was back in right around 2014, something like that. Anyway, so when I found out about this study initially, it was in 2010. He had already run the numbers on it. He had already been asked to do the scenario. He was asked by 2 state senators. I will leave their names off of here. I will ask them if it's okay if I end up sharing it, because this is an important topic. But what these 2 state senators came to Gary and said is, hey, we want you to run a threat and vulnerability assessment just on Middle Tennessee, like we're talking about Nashville, Tennessee. We want you to tell us what happens if the food stamp systems melt down. Where people cannot get food, they cannot get sustenance for their children or for themselves or their family. And so Gary started running this, and it's so wide, all the things that he covered. I'm going to stay mainly focused on the timelines and the time frames and how it affects each individual household. But we have what's called in the United States just-in-time shipping or ready shipping, to where your consumables, your staple products on your shelf, we're talking your breads, meats, your milks, the things that people buy day to day, your eggs, those things are replenished every 72 hours, about every 3 days. We have a phenomenal shipping and restocking ability in the United States. And so what Gary first initially looked at in this threat and vulnerability assessment is if the food stamp system melts down, the most vulnerable people, the ones that use those systems, the ones that depend on those systems, usually don't have a stock. There's not a cupboard full of food, usually, and they depend on that just-in-time or ready shipping. So every 3 days, when those things are depleted off the shelf, these people are part of that cycle of replenishing those things. And Gary said in about 72 hours, when those things are gone off the shelf and they're unable to replenish it, he said the looting starts. Now, you think we live in a civilized society. I don't know if you've had any look at this. I'm going to put 2 links below. I'm going to put 2 links. One, what happened in Spain about 8 years ago when they had a societal meltdown and all the looting. The mobs would go into grocery stores and clean them out. Argentina's had a failed economy 3 times now over the last 3.5 decades. They've had similar things there. Flash mobs, they call them flash mobs, go in, they clean out the stores, they clean out the staple products, they get what they need for sustenance. Now, I don't know why anyone in the United States would think that we would be that we would be spared from something like that happening here. Just look at what's happened in Portland right now. We even saw this happen in Texas a few years ago when the EBT system didn't work. There were people that went in and did some looting then. So Gary says that in about 72 hours, those people go into your local Kroger, your local Walmart, your local Publix, and they go into mobs and they steal what they have to have for sustenance for their kids. And in about 72 hours, that stuff is cleaned off the shelf. Well, when it's not being able to be replenished by the just-in-time ready shipping, then there's a shortage in the stores. So where do you think those hungry mobs of people are going next? They're coming to your house. That's why I played the little video that I did earlier. In a civilized society like the United States, it's very interesting because most of us are not aware, or we haven't seen, or we haven't experienced. We haven't gone to Afghanistan. We haven't gone into the Gaza Strip. We haven't seen when water, your basic necessities for life are not available. So Gary explains that once the store is out and they're not being replenished because just-in-time ready shipping can't get there, then those people start moving into the urban areas where there are tighter packed housing, there are people with means, people who probably do have things on the shelf that they've stored or put back a little bit. If you ask artificial intelligence nowadays, just go ask AI or Grok or something. I think 10 or 12 years ago, your average person who considered themselves to be a prepper was around 6 to 8% of people. Now there's about 40% of Americans who say, I've seen the hurricane, I've seen the tornadoes, I've seen some floods. We all saw what happened over in New Orleans years ago with Katrina. There are people who have some kind of a mindset about storing and putting things aside and keeping them. FEMA even has classes now based on what Gary did in his study. And those classes are, at least every American should have a minimum of 72 hours worth of food, water, and basic medical necessities on hand in case something happens. So at the end of that period, when people start looting in your urban areas, everything's gone in about another week. So let's say you're about 10 days in. Your urban areas look like a mess. Where do they go next? What happens? Where do people go? Is it already a civil meltdown? Are the authorities going to be able to take care of that? Do you think that your local law enforcement, if that 50% of people who depend on some type of governmental sustenance, do you think that policeman or law enforcement agent is going to be protecting and watching over your family? There is not enough law enforcement in the United States to take care of mass angry mobs. There is not enough military to cover the entire United States. It just simply cannot be done. It's going to be left up to you to take care of your own, because once the urban areas are spent and depleted, those crowds move out into the more rural areas. Now, I don't necessarily mean entirely rural, because there's around most cities the urban sprawl. Let's call it the urban sprawl, which is kind of that area between true urban neighborhoods, the urban sprawl, then you have the rural areas. It takes about 2 weeks for people to move out into those areas. They might not be able to get gas by then, but they certainly are able to walk out or move out in the hordes. Let's call them the hordes, right? And go start stealing, looting, plundering, getting what they need for their own sustenance. I'm going to go back to this video that I played from the Sean Ryan show at the very beginning of this. If you think those things cannot happen here in the United States, you're very foolish. That is why 16 years ago, when I had some customers murdered, I started looking at things very differently when it came to security for households and individuals. We teach firearm safety. We teach personal defense. We understand perimeter security, and we understand taking care of what is yours. I will never, ever suggest that we go out and be militant about getting rid of people who are causing a problem. I will never suggest that we go out and be part of the continuation of a societal meltdown. However, at some point, you may find it very necessary to protect yourself from the person on the other side of the door trying to get into your house to take what belongs to your family. Are we supposed to take care of our neighbors and take care of our fellow human beings? Absolutely. There is a point, though, where a mass horde is just uncontrollable. You can't confront them and you cannot deal with them. You need to be thinking about what happens in these scenarios. Please protect your family. If you'd like, you can contact us. We can help you think about getting situated and squared away. But regardless of what you do, do not take for granted that the system that we have today is always going to protect us. Today's November 1st. This is the meltdown day when they're supposed to, not be able to supply any more food stamps or EBT or things that people need to go pick up their free food. And if you watch any of the other videos for people who are telling you, hey, I'm going to get what's mine, I'm going to feed my kids, I'm going to go out there and steal what I need, don't get in my way when I'm leaving Walmart, those people exist. Those people exist. Watch out for them. Protect yourself, keep your head on a swivel, be safe, and please share this and like and subscribe.